Is Yae Miko still worth using? After the many Electro characters that have been added, the many changes, the many buffs that Electro has received, it has been made clear that Electro has surpassed Geo as an element. But does this add up to Miko being worthy of your primos? As someone who has used her ever since her first banner, let's talk about it. But first, remember to sub and like if you enjoyed or found this helpful. Help the channel reach 2K subs soon, it would really mean a lot. Thanks, and I greatly appreciate it. I honestly think the main thing that pushes people away from actually pulling for her is the problems that she has with her kit when she first came out. So let's address what happened then and compare it to now. For starters, nothing really changed about her own overall kit. It's pretty much the same press her skill 3 times, use her burst, and use her skill 3 times again, rinse and repeat your rotation until everything dies. The main complaint about this as an off-field DPS, which is what I think she's best at, she takes quite a long time to set up, and as someone who has used her for quite a long time ever since she came out, I still feel like this stands out a lot, especially since she doesn't have iframes for some reason that I won't understand. Back then, Dendro didn't exist, and the many buffs that we had back then didn't last long enough to justify how much time she would spend off-field. For example, her off-field DPS rotation, it would be preferred to set up Viridescent and any buffs before she can maximize her damage. A lot of the buffs wouldn't last long enough due to how long her setups would take, so Miko couldn't really take full advantage of all the buffs that she had. Viridescent only lasts for 10 seconds, and it can't be refreshed if your Anemo character is off-field. And because Miko will take around 5 seconds to do her entire rotation, you only have 5 extra seconds to do anything else with your party. On top of that, Miko doesn't snapshot, so there isn't really much room for error. Characters like Fischl, Beidou, Raiden, all characters who do a very similar job but more efficiently in their own ways really put off a lot of people from pulling her, and I can totally understand why. I still don't like the way she feels, not gonna lie. She just feels so vulnerable throughout her entire rotation. Even though I've gotten used to how she works and how her rotations flow, I still get a little frustrated thinking about what they could have done. Her damage was never the problem. She could still do great damage back then. Her burst was one of the highest scaling things in the entire game. It's more like she didn't really do what the others could do as effectively or efficiently. And in a quick swap meta, Miko wasn't fast enough to compete. Yes, you could argue about using Miko as a main DPS, but in my opinion, there wasn't really enough gear to justify using her on field, and it wasn't even fast enough to begin with. Another thing that I also addressed before is how she never really had a best-in-slot artifact set. Shimanoa's wasn't really that great of a set, because even though it boosts normal and charge attack damage by 50%, it only boosts those things. And when everything else in her kit has way bigger scaling, I'm pretty sure her auto attacks are going to be the least of your worries. However, there are many things that were in Miko's favor when Sumeru came out. First off, Dendro is probably the best buff that any Electro character could have wished for. Like I said in my last Yae Miko video, I'd argue that she got one of the biggest buffs out of everyone when Dendro was released. Not only has it boosted her already pretty good damage, but it also maximized her efficiency. And since Nahida recently got released, it only got better for her. The reason why Dendro is so good is because Aggravate is a massive damage increase for every single Electro character. Since it scales with EM, and Yae Miko also scales with that stat, it allows her to excel in the damage category. And what it does is add flat damage depending on your EM stat, which can be further buffed depending on your crit stats and damage percent. As long as you have a consistent Dendro applicator, you can constantly refresh the Quicken aura to constantly trigger Aggravate off-field. This allows Miko to get away with having such a long rotation time. And on top of that, you can also use an Anemo unit to further boost her damage even more. But since Nahida applies too much Dendro, it will be somewhat difficult to do that, but there are workarounds. On top of all of this, she now has a best-in-slot artifact, which is the Gilded Dream set, and it can give her a good chunk of EM. And we should all know how valuable EM is to her. This artifact set boosts everything in her kit, so you could use an on-field DPS Miko if you really wanted to. But, to answer the long and awaited question, is she actually worth pulling for? Honestly, it really depends. This is what I always say when it comes to pulling for a character. I never think that there is a must pull, and I don't think there will ever be. Obviously, if you like her as a character and enjoy her playstyle, knock yourselves out, go for it. But from a meta perspective, if you think her teams will be the most effective way to help you clear content, then yeah, definitely do so. If you want an Electro DPS who can get the job done, go for it. There are obviously better Electro characters out there. I don't think she's a meta-defining character, but she does her job really well right now, especially after Dendro release. I know no one is going to ask about this, but my gut feeling tells me that Sino is still better than Miko, But after using her a little more recently, I'm slowly retracting that statement. Anyways, remember to sub and like if you enjoyed. Help the channel reach 2K subs soon. I hope this helps whoever is on the fence about Miko to make a decision. But again, don't feel forced to pull for her. Have a good night and day wherever you're at, and I'll see you all next time. Peace and take care.